Alabama, Elise from Facebook has a question for us.
What are the phases we go through when getting to know someone? And how do we avoid moving too fast if there's a strong chemistry between us?
Can we talk a bit about attachment styles? Because I think this may be the one area where we disagree. And it's mainly, although I probably agree with the essence of what we're talking about here, but to me, as soon as I began to wake up in right around age 39 or 40, I understood all of the problems with attachment. And attachment being the main roadblock toward love for me. Because I was really attaching myself, not just to a person, although I've attached myself to plenty of people, but also a particular outcome with that person.
Yeah.
And it strikes back to a question earlier that we were talking about being attracted to someone, but then we also are attracted to this ideal version of someone.
Sure.
It's not. I'm not attracted to my wife. I'm attracted to my wife if she does these 14 things in this sequence and continues to do them. And oh, by the way, as soon as she meets those, I'll heap on 3 more expectations. For some reason, I'm never happy now with the relationship. And then it gets back to those 3 words that you ended that beautiful reading with. We want out. And we tend to want out because of, because of these attachments that we've tethered our happiness to.
Oh, I could say so much about this. I mean, this is this idea that we have decided that our partners are just these need-meeting machines, that they need to do all of these things to meet our needs. And if they're not meeting their needs, it's them. And something's wrong with the relationship, right? Rather than owning I have needs, and many of those needs are actually my responsibility to meet. And I can have honest conversation with my partner, obviously, about my needs, but the expectations feel a little bit different to me than necessarily attachment, only when we're talking about attachment as attachment like theory, right? So I kind of want to say, let's separate out the idea of expectation from attachment. Now, attachment to outcome to me is an expectation, right? Attachment in attachment theory feels a little bit different. And so I'm going to quote Gabor Mate. So he talks about how every single human that comes onto this plane has 2 needs, the need for attachment and the need for autonomy, okay? The thing is that at the end of the day, attachment will win out because attachment is what we need to survive. So as a baby, we have to attach to our primary caregivers in order to survive, right? So what do? I learn how to mold myself into what they like and they need to please them because I need that positive regard. I need that kind of joyful connection, that love, right? So we learn these things very early on. I do still need autonomy. Those 2 things will transfer into adulthood. But at the end of the day, attachment, I have learned I can die without it.
Right.
And so without really examining where, why, how those attachment patterns start to form, unconsciously, I'm going to revert back to attachment being the primary thing that motivates me in relationship because it's attached to survival. Now, it's not as an adult. If I don't meet John's attachment needs, right, I'm not going to die. He's not going to die. But very unconsciously, at a very deep level, I believe that I will, unless I've done the examining and I can call that out for what it is, right? So I want to say, like, I do think we need to say attachment and expectation might be a little bit different, at least in this context.
And yet it's possible to transcend that type of attachment as well when you start to understand it for what it is. And in fact, teenagers begin to understand this because that's when they become unattached or they actually try to detach, which is different
from... They start to test it.
Yeah, and so you've had this need, this attachment, because you are literally surviving based on your attachment to your parents. But at some point, you're able to survive on your own. And then you always do the thumbing your nose thing at
which
the
is
parents.
the autonomy.
Yes.
That's where autonomy comes into play, usually is in adolescence.
Yes. And yet, as we become adults, now we pick up these new attachments. We think they're going to help us survive, but they actually get in the way of our freedom. Yeah. And examples are the white picket fence, the big house, the nice car, the car loan, the $1,000 suits or whatever they are, right? Nothing inherently wrong with these things, but if we think this is what makes me who I am, this is my identity. Our second book, Everything That Remains, the first line of it is, our identities are shaped by the costumes we wear.
The personas.
And quite often we try to adorn ourselves with literal costumes, a suit, or I'm this type of person, or this type of car, this type of house, because we're afraid of what's going on in here.
Sure. Is that why you wear black, by the way?
It's just simple. It's very slimming.
Yeah, like neutral.
There's no costume to it. Yeah.
It's the donuts. Attachment styles, not in the sense of Buddhism and getting hooked, but in wiring due to how we were raised and how that affects relationships. So I'm avoidantly attached. I'm anxiously attached.
Wait a second, are you?
No.
This is new news to me.
I'm anxiously attached. She's more on the avoidance
dips
side.
into it. Yeah.
Dip into it. And of course, we've done a lot of work. Everyone's trying to swim towards secure. But me being anxious comes out in me wanting to hold her leg, or she needs to tell me 5 times a day that she's attracted to me, right? Having that sense of, needing that. Her avoidant is when I do that, she runs the other way, right? So just being aware of our defaults, where it comes from. And then the work is, like you said, now that I'm aware of this, what does it look like to sit with it, or whatever it needs for you to run the other way, and so you're more securely attached.
What are these different attachment styles? Can we, for our listeners,
there's a bunch of them, but we just go through 3.
There's 4 that are the primary, right? So there's secure, which is really the one everybody wants to move towards. Then we've got avoidant, we've got anxious, and we've got anxiously. Oh my God, I just blanked out. Disorganized. Sorry. So those are the 4. I was like, I'm a therapist, I swear. And then there's disorganized attachment. So within an anxious attachment, it is the kind of constant desire and need for that external sense of like, I am okay, I am here, I am needed, I am necessary. And so we're constantly seeking that external, right? That's what soothes my anxiety, okay? Which is what this idea all is based on. Avoidance is really too much closeness actually makes like my sense of self gets snuffed out by too much closeness. And so in order to protect against that, I put up that wall, I back up, that's the avoiding.
Right.
And then disorganized usually comes to play when there's a little bit of both. And usually disorganized is really traced to real trauma, like rooted in severe trauma and upbringing. Parents who are completely incapable of meeting your attachment needs for a variety of reasons will tend to see people fall in disorganized. Secure, the percentage of secure is actually really low only because we do tend to swing. So we can actually show up differently in different relationships. I've been in relationships with people who are more avoidant, and I tend to be a little bit more anxious, right? And so it does tend to be like what you trigger in me, I respond in kind. The reason why we talk about it in the book is because we have seen so often in our clients this idea of opposites attract. His anxious triggers in me my avoidance. It makes sense to us that unconsciously we would be drawn to each other because that's just another layer of healing that we actually need to do. And he's providing me with, and I am providing him with an opportunity to heal those wounds if we look at it that way.
Yeah, and her avoiding puts a black light on my anxious.
Right.
You could either look at it and say, okay, here's the prescription, or you could not look at it and date the same person and relationships keep going the same way.
And just be activated all of the time.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy this standalone Patreon highlight? If so, you can listen to full episodes of the Minimalist Private Podcast, available exclusively on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free.